Before we begin, let me ask you something I have always been curious about. What state are you watching this from? I am pretty sure Denver is not the only place where an office can stage drama intense enough to compete with primetime television. Every workplace has its own flavor of chaos, usually depending on whatever coffee the employees are holding when it begins. My Monday morning started with a layer of cold wind sliding down from the Rockies, sweeping across the parking lot and tapping against the office windows, as if to remind us that even in June, Denver refuses to follow any season at all. The sky was suspiciously clear, the kind of blue that makes people think everything will go smoothly. But years on the job have taught me one thing: if the world looks too peaceful, something is definitely coiling underneath, waiting to snap. I walked into the main lobby at 7:40, same as always. From the outside, the 8-story building had that polished, professional, chill tech company's love, friendly enough to look modern, stern enough to say they could afford ultraviolet coated glass across the entire front. Morning sunlight bounced off those panels, creating a faint golden haze. Beautiful, if you were not about to step into an 8-hour shift. My name is Elena Marquez, 37 years old, telecommunications infrastructure security engineer. Sounds complicated, but I usually explain it like this. I watch over a neighborhood, except that neighborhood is made of fiber optic lines, servers, transmission systems, and a few federal things I am not allowed to spell out. I am the type who sits down, opens the technical documents, gets the work done, and leaves while the sun is still out. I do not exaggerate my role, do not seek attention, and absolutely do not enjoy drama. But like I said, every office comes with a few people determined to make your drama-free life impossible. I hung my handbag on the chair and my gray knit cardigan on the hook beside my desk. That cardigan had been with me for years. Soft, lightweight, just enough to survive an air conditioning system that constantly tries to convince everyone they are working in the Arctic. I hate the cold. So the cardigan became part of my unofficial signature, along with my black coffee and the blue ink notes I always scribble. I had barely set my coffee down, had not even taken the first sip, when the email chime rang. Not the important one, just the everyday office ping. But the content was not everyday at all. Sender, Monica Hale. Title, Head of Administration. Message, short, sweet, and the kind of sweet that raises goosebumps. Dear all, starting this week, please comply with the summer dress code to maintain a professional and unified company image. Kindly avoid attire unsuitable for the season and not reflective of our dynamic work culture. I let out a long breath. Not tired, just the kind of exhale you give when you hear a song you have already grown sick of 3 seasons ago. I whispered a tiny sentence, barely loud enough for my keyboard to hear. Here we go again. Monica is not the first person in my career to stir up trouble using vague policy language, but she belongs to that rare category that does it with absolute conviction, believing she is protecting the company's image from invisible threats like knit sleeves and neutral colors. I reread the email slowly, hoping I had misunderstood. I had not. To Monica, it was harmless. To me, it was the first sign. Not about the cardigan, not about the weather, about Monica, and the way she flexes power whenever she feels like reminding someone she has it. A soft, creeping irritation climbed the back of my neck. Not fear, instinct. The kind of tech people get when a strange log file appears in the system, or the server suddenly runs faster than it should. It never means something good. Something was coming, and it was not a technical issue. I took a sip of coffee, adjusted my screen, and tried to return to work, but the thought lingered. Here we go again. And you know how it is. When a story begins with a knit cardigan and an email from someone you would rather avoid, the peaceful morning is nothing but a false advertisement. And if you think the opening already smells like trouble, wait until what happens next. Because I had no idea that in just a few hours, that cardigan would become a silent witness to an office showdown I never signed up for, but somehow became the unwilling main character of. All I knew that morning was this. I set my coffee down, hoping for an ordinary day, and Denver has never let that hope survive for long. Have you ever met someone whose smile feels like a warning that trouble is already on its way? Not the friendly smile you see at a grocery checkout or at a family gathering. I am talking about the kind of smile that curves just enough, lingers one heartbeat longer than it should, and never, ever reaches the eyes. That Monday morning, I saw that smile the moment I turned my chair toward my screen, and I knew I did not have much time left to enjoy whatever thin layer of peace the day still had. Monica Hale appeared at the end of the work aisle with the walk I always called, in my head, the walk of someone carrying a summons. 41 years old, always dressed in colors so bright they could make anyone behind her squint. Slim frame, sharp face, plum red lipstick that made her look like she had just left a seminar about confidence taught by someone who had never met reality. If you saw Monica for the first time, you might think she was lively and approachable. But if you worked with her for more than 3 weeks, you would understand why every new employee learned very quickly to avoid crossing her path. The interesting thing is that Monica did not hold any real power. Head of administration sounded important, but in practice, it meant she oversaw policies, forms, meeting rooms, printers, and the kind of rules no one reads unless they are forced to. But she loved that tiny bit of power the way some people love caring for a rare cactus. I probably would not have had any issue with her if she had not used that power like a needle, poking at anyone she felt stood out more than she did. I bent over to straighten a stack of files as she approached. Her perfume always arrived a few seconds before she did, strong enough to overpower the smell of fresh coffee. I looked up just as that smile appeared. The smile I just described. Elena, she said, stretching the first syllable as if to prove she was very patient, but only barely. I turned my chair, keeping my expression neutral. Good morning, Monica. Her voice was sweet as sugar but carried the sharpness of a brand new paper blade. I caught her glancing at the gray knit cardigan hanging on my hook. Ah, I wanted to follow up quickly about the email this morning. We are applying the summer dress code. I am sure you saw it. I nodded. Yes, I did. Monica tilted her head, her smile widening just a little. Good. I just was not sure a thick knit cardigan like this still fits the summer image the company is aiming for. You understand, right? Energetic, professional, season appropriate. I glanced at my cardigan for a second, then back at her. The office air conditioning is set to 18 degrees, I said softly. Outside was around 12 when I arrived. I think I am managing summer in Denver just fine. Her smile twitched. I knew she did not like people responding with logic. Many people assume she is confident, but really, it is a confidence built on sand. The kind that survives only because no one wants to waste time. Arguing. I see, she said, shifting to a sweeter tone. But overall, we are aiming for consistency to create a sense of unity. And, sometimes clothing is not just for warmth, it reflects the spirit of the team. I did not say anything for a few seconds, partly because I did not want to extend the conversation, partly because I was genuinely wondering how my cardigan posed any threat to team spirit. Right then, Brenda appeared behind Monica like an unnecessary exclamation mark. Brenda was always like that, always standing just over Monica's shoulder, clipboard in hand, as if she were preparing to record a major event in human history. She gave me a small crooked smile, her eyes flicking over my cardigan as though analyzing the fabric. Good morning, Elena, she said quietly. I nodded. Brenda glanced at Monica, then spoke. We just want to make sure everyone expresses the summer spirit. Brighter colors, lighter fabrics. We need consistency. I gave a thin smile. I understand. Although I have to admit, I have never seen any official document stating that neutral knitwear is a threat to the company's summer spirit. Monica lifted her chin slightly, a gesture I knew well. It was what she did whenever she needed to reclaim control after feeling pushed back even a little. She did not say it out loud, but I saw the irritation immediately. Not about the cardigan, about something bigger. The comparisons people made between us, the remarks I had received in recent meetings, the infrastructure project reports I had been assigned, all the things Monica did not have and did not enjoy seeing. I could read the jealousy in the way she shifted her weight, the way her hand grazed her hip, a posture people take when they are trying to look like they are in control. Jealousy never speaks directly, it always shows through small actions. Being too sweet, smiling too long, pressing each word in a criticism like it is a private pleasure. I answered with a steady tone. If there is anything I am not meeting, Monica, feel free to tell me directly. I always follow the rules, of course, the ones written in official documents. Brenda reflexively scribbled something on her clipboard. Monica froze for half a second, then smiled again, this time with a stiffness she could not hide. I think we understand each other, she said. We just want to make sure everyone is moving in the same direction. I nodded. Yes, I hope so too. Monica and Brenda turned and walked away, their steps even and a little too quick. I watched them for a moment. I did not need to hear them to know they would start whispering as soon as they thought they were out of range. I did not need to think deeply to understand this was not over. People like Monica never stop at cardigans. That is just the opening move, a pretext, a warm up for whatever she was planning. And you already know this. People who love tiny bits of power can create trouble so big no one sees it coming. I turned back to my screen, relaxed my shoulders, and let one simple truth settle in. Office drama does not start with an explosion. It starts with a tiny smile and a comment about a cardigan. And whatever was coming toward me, even though I could not see its shape yet, was definitely not going to be small. Not everyone who stays quiet is weak. Some people are simply busy keeping the entire system running in the right direction. I learned that from my own work, and that morning, after the loaded exchange with Monica, that truth felt sharper than ever. I turned back to my screen, loosening the hand that had been resting on the edge of my desk. If you had looked at me right then, you might have thought I was unusually calm. But the truth is, I did not have any other choice. My work does not allow emotions to interfere. I handle transmission security, monitor broadcast stations, and review federal files where every line has the potential to impact an entire region. In this office, no one really knows what I do every day. To them, I am just the person who writes code, checks parameters, and submits reports. They do not know that a minor failure in the transmission system can disrupt emergency communication. They do not know that there are nights when I review suspicious data packets one by one, manually confirming encryption to see if anything looks off. They do not know I have been asked to review high designation federal files, the kind not even allowed to be mentioned in internal meetings. I do not hide these things on purpose. There is simply no reason to bring them up. To most people, those details feel distant, and no one wants to hear a lecture about signal algorithms at 7 in the morning when all they want is coffee. I hold a CISA Tier 5 clearance, nearly the highest level a civilian employee can obtain. To qualify, I went through rounds of screening exhausting enough to feel unreal in hindsight. Residency checks, financial verification, interviews with acquaintances, tech history analysis, and personal security risk assessments. Nothing in my life was allowed to be loose, and I accepted that as part of the job. Yet no one in this office knows. Here, people only see the knit cardigan, the black coffee, and the fact that I do not participate in gossip. To them, I am the quiet one, the easy one to overlook. That is exactly what makes Monica believe she can treat me like anyone else she has pushed around. That assumption, I think, is the beginning of every disaster she never saw coming. Not far from my desk, David was leaning on his workstation, watching the exchange between me and Monica. He belonged to the rare group that never joins any clique. Not close to me, but aware enough to understand what was happening. David is the quiet observer type, the one everyone forgets about until they realize he remembers every detail without writing anything down. He raised an eyebrow at me, as if asking whether I was all right. I answered with a small nod. He understood immediately, no extra words needed. Just a look. I returned to my tasks. A set of federal files had arrived earlier that morning, requesting encryption verification. I began the process step by step. Key authentication, identifier matching, internal signature comparison, cross-checks, to ensure no anomaly. Everything is familiar, quiet, and clean. The exact opposite of the storm beginning to form in the office. The email notification pinged again. Monica, once more. Subject line, clarification needed. I opened it. a long paragraph without a single concrete statement. She wrote that there were signs of behavior not aligned with team spirit, that she needed further understanding to avoid impacting group cohesion, and that she hoped I would clarify everything in a meeting. The email was not sent only to me, it was CC'd to HR and Brenda. This was not a question. This was the creation of a narrative, a story with no content yet, vague enough to make the recipient feel guilty, and vague enough for outsiders to think something serious might be happening. I read it again carefully. No accusation, no example, no actual issue, just suggestions aimed at me, crafted subtly enough that any response could be reframed as a defensive reaction. David looked at me again. This time his expression was not a question. It was recognition. He had seen this pattern from Monica too many times. He knew, and I knew, that this was the first step of something larger. I did not reply, not because I was afraid, but because responding now would place me exactly where she wanted, in the ambiguity she created. I saved the email into a separate folder, one I had set up long ago for situations like this. In my field, everything requires documentation. I returned to the lines of encryption on my screen. I knew a big wave was coming, but I have spent years dealing with irregular signals. The only difference here was that this anomaly was not coming from the system. It was coming from a person. Some work never gets praised, but everyone relies on it. And sometimes, the very people who depend on you are the ones who push you the hardest. But I was not worried. I have seen systems fail badly and stayed calm enough to fix them. I could handle Monica the same way. Because in both life and transmission networks, noise is just noise. What matters is not letting it drown out the primary signal. And the primary signal was painfully clear. Monica was building something. And I was watching it unfold, step by step. Sometimes people do not hate your sweater. They just hate the fact that you wear it with more confidence than they do. I understood that more clearly than ever that afternoon, the moment the internal announcement popped up saying Monica wanted to meet me in the small conference room at the end of the hallway. Personal discussion. It sounded normal, but in this office, it was an invitation into a narrative no one wanted to be part of. That small conference room was meant for quick chats, but most of the time it served as the stage for internal reminders. When I opened the door, Monica was already sitting at the head of the table, wearing an outfit far too bright for the cramped space. Brenda sat beside her, gripping her clipboard tight, eyes ready to document even my breathing if necessary. Monica gave the familiar smile. "Thank you for coming, Elena. Please sit." I pulled out the chair, rested my hands lightly on the table, and stayed calm as always. Monica placed a stack of papers down as if presenting evidence in a courtroom. When she rotated the stack slightly, I already knew it contained nothing more than the dress code everyone in the company had read. "I think we need to clarify a few things about the summer dress code," Monica began. "We want to maintain a consistent image, and your knit cardigan does not reflect that spirit." Brenda started writing immediately. Without looking, I knew those words would be recorded with unnecessary solemnity. I kept my tone even. I reviewed the policy. There is nothing in it that mentions fabric type or prohibits knitwear in the office. Monica tilted her head and smiled a little wider. "True, it is not written. But the summer spirit requires lighter, more cohesive clothing. Your cardigan gives a sense of being out of step." I looked at her, then at the stack of papers she had not opened once. It was a prop. I asked directly, "Can you point to a specific section in the policy that applies to my situation?" Monica's smile faltered. Brenda wrote even faster, as if increasing speed would make the content more legitimate. Monica set her pen down, her voice soft but sharp. "Elena, this is not about wording. This is about attitude. We feel you are not integrating." I answered plainly. "So is this a clothing issue or an attitude issue?" That question made Monica narrow her eyes. I knew I had touched the exact spot she wanted to avoid. When someone uses a vague excuse to hide the real reason, a direct question always reveals more than they intend. Brenda kept writing, non-stop, as if the act of recording mattered more than the meaning. Monica continued, her voice picking up speed. "We simply want to help you adjust to fit the team culture. If you cooperate, everything will be very easy," I asked. "What exactly do I need to adjust?" The question made Monica turn her pen in a slow circle. She had no example. Because this meeting was never meant to resolve anything about a cardigan. Its purpose was to establish a foundation so the next meeting could be labeled formal documentation. I had worked long enough to recognize when someone was building a narrative designed to remove a person. When Monica failed to produce a single specific example, she moved to her usual tactic: soft commands disguised as support. I feel we are not aligned. If you do not make adjustments, we will have to consider whether you are a fit for your current role. Brenda wrote down that sentence verbatim, and I knew in Monica's mind this meeting had already become step one in the disciplinary path she had planned. I stayed upright, voice steady, not defensive. I am ready to follow any clear policy. If there is something specific I am violating, I would appreciate hearing it so I can address it immediately. Monica pressed her lips together. She did not like being asked for specifics. People who hold power through ambiguity hate clarity because clarity strips their leverage away. Elena, she said, we are trying to build consistency in the team. I hope you understand that, I answered softly. I do understand. And I also hope every piece of feedback is based on policy, not on personal impressions. A simple sentence, but Brenda paused for a second before writing it down. Maybe she realized it carried more weight than the others. Monica closed the stack of papers. That gesture said more than her next line. We will continue this later, but I trust you will find the right direction. That meant the meeting was over, and it also meant she had secured what she wanted: a documented conversation. Vague, but enough to be added to a file if she decided to escalate. I stood up. No protest, no raised voice. I simply looked at Monica for a second. She did not understand my work. She did not understand the reach of the data I managed. And she certainly did not understand that pushing someone with federal clearance into a corner was the riskiest move she could have made. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Not angry, not anxious, just carrying a clarity as sharp as a straight line. Monica had just lit the fuse of the cardigan battle she believed she controlled. She did not know that sometimes the spark she thinks she owns is actually the fuse leading to a place she is not strong enough to stand in. If someone calls you into a meeting at 3:15 in the afternoon, do not expect good news. It is too late in the day to resolve anything, but too early to go home. The perfect hour for someone to construct a story and place its weight on another person. 10 minutes before the meeting, I already knew what was coming. Monica did not try to hide it. People who are too confident in their victory reveal their plans in the way they walk. She moved past the desks like someone preparing to deliver a verdict. Brenda followed close behind, clutching her clipboard as if it were a freshly printed scripture. At 3:14, I stood in front of conference room 3. The glass door reflected my silhouette more sharply than usual. Maybe because the light behind Monica was pointed straight outward. She was already seated, right at the center of the table, posture rigid like the chairperson of a hearing. Brenda sat on her right, nodding to no one, even though no one had spoken. Elena, Monica said, her voice smooth as still water but cold beneath. Thank you for coming. There was no gratitude in that sentence. It was simply the opening line of the program she had prepared. I sat down, rested my hands on the table, eyes steady. I had witnessed enough of these meetings to know what was real and what was performance. Monica opened the file in front of her, adjusting pages that were already perfectly aligned. A small ritual to reclaim control. When she began speaking, her tone was no longer that of an internal discussion. It was the tone of someone reading charges to an imaginary jury. Elena, after observation, we have noted behaviors inconsistent with company culture. Specifically, failing to follow the dress code and showing an uncooperative attitude when reminded. Brenda nodded nonstop. Each time Monica paused for half a second, Brenda scribbled faster, as if afraid she might miss a historic moment. Monica continued. You wore a cardigan inappropriate for summer, affecting the collective image. When given feedback, you responded without goodwill, causing us to question your commitment to a professional environment. I looked at Monica, calm. Every word she chose was designed to paint me as resistant. Terms like responded, goodwill, and affecting were words that could be interpreted in multiple ways, a familiar tactic for those trying to create fault where none exists. I asked a simple question. Monica, Is there a specific example of this uncooperative attitude? The room tightened a little, not physically, just the air between us, shrinking into a straight line. Monica did not appreciate questions. She preferred people to listen and nod, the way Brenda always did. Monica answered after 2 measured breaths. We felt a lack of cooperation when you questioned the policy instead of complying. The way she said felt told me she had no example, but feelings are useful in meetings like this. They require no evidence, no proof, just enough vagueness to serve as justification. I kept my voice steady. I asked for clarity, not to oppose. Brenda wrote it down, though she hesitated, waiting for Monica to signal whether the sentence should be preserved exactly. Monica did not want this to drag on. When she closed the file, I knew the conclusion was next. Every charge is read for one purpose: the final blow. Elena, she said, after consideration, we have decided to terminate your employment, effective immediately. No discussion, no improvement plan, no intermediate step. Just the verdict. Clean, quick, and precise, in the exact way Monica wanted. Brenda exhaled softly, as if completing a difficult mission. I looked at Monica for a moment. She did not meet my eyes. Her gaze landed on the knit cardigan hanging beside the table, as if that was her real opponent. Then that smile appeared. The smile people have when they think they have won a small battle, unaware that the larger war lies beyond their reach. I stood up. No argument. No attempt to alter the outcome. I knew better than anyone that this meeting was never arranged to hear me speak. It was arranged to formalize a decision Monica had written in her mind days before. Thank you for informing me, I said, steady and unshaken. Monica nodded, the smile still glued to her face. Brenda closed her clipboard like she was sealing the end of a ritual. I stepped out of the room, brushing my hand lightly against the knit cardigan on the hook. The irony was that the item deemed inappropriate was the only thing in that room not telling a single lie. The door shut behind me, ending an afternoon where truth was not what they wanted. They only wanted someone to blame. Monica believed she had won. She believed the cardigan and the person wearing it had been removed. She did not know the largest wave had not arrived, and when it did, it would not be coming from me. You never forget the sound of leather shoes worn by people who work with secrets. It is not loud, not rushed, and nothing like the footsteps of a manager pretending to hold authority. It is the calm stride of those who know exactly where they are, why they are there, and who do not need anyone's permission. After being fired, I returned to the reception area to collect my final paycheck envelope. A thin envelope, a few papers, and an automatically generated number. No, thank you. Good luck. I sat in the plastic chair near the entrance, resting the envelope on my knee. Not to relax, just to wait for the protocol that this office always follows. Hand over the envelope, collect the badge, and escort the person out. I looked at the employee badge in my palm. It had opened countless doors in this building. Now it was just useless plastic. I turned it lightly between my fingers. Calm, no regret, no anger. Just the coldness of the office floor, familiar yet distant. Then I heard that sound. Leather shoes. 2 people. Even steps, never sliding along the wall, never slowing at the reception desk. I looked up just as they passed through the glass doors. No need for name tags, no need for introductions. Their bearing was unmistakable. 2 CISA agents. Not from a regional office, not technical staff. Agents. The kind who only appear when a protocol has been torn badly enough to require a federal hand. They dressed plainly. Dark blue shirts, dark khaki pants, light jackets, no logos, no visible symbols, only a slim metal badge clipped inside the belt, just enough for the right eyes to see and the wrong ones to miss. But their posture was different. It was the posture of people who know they can walk into any room without a key. The receptionist looked up, ready to ask something, but the woman in the pair lifted a hand slightly, signaling that it was unnecessary. Not rude, simply not necessary. They walked forward without glancing left or right. No checking, no guiding, no hesitation. The office froze, as if someone had pressed pause on the entire workplace. Chairs stopped turning. Eyes blinked but stayed still. People who pretended to be busy suddenly sat perfectly still, watching. Gossip evaporated like it had never existed. The air conditioning hummed, but every other sound vanished. I sat there, watching the scene like someone rewatching a movie while already knowing the ending. The two agents went straight to the front desk. No visitor log, no need to sign in. The man leaned in and said something I could not hear from where I sat, but the receptionist heard it clearly. Her face drained of color in a single second. She pointed toward the corridor leading to the operations wing. The agents nodded once, then turned in as if they had walked that hallway many times. The woman walked first. Her steps are steady, neither rushed nor slow. The man followed behind, scanning the entire floor with the eyes of someone mapping the landscape. They did not speak. They did not need to. They were the type who had worked together long enough to communicate without words. David sat in the row closest to the glass. When he saw them, he straightened instantly, like struck by a sudden jolt, not from fear, but because he understood the gravity. David noticed things, and in that moment, he recognized something the rest of the office had not processed yet. The real storm was just beginning. His eyes flicked toward me, not asking what happened, not offering sympathy, but the look of someone who had connected data points fast and reached the first conclusion. Whatever Monica started was no longer an internal issue. I did not nod. I did not signal. But perhaps he already understood that their presence was not a coincidence. The agents walked deeper into the office, then turned into the leadership operations room. They did not knock. They did not wait. When they opened the door, every movement inside went silent. I heard a chair slide. Someone inhaled sharply, a man's voice cutting off mid-sentence. And then, in the hushed corridor, one sound rose above everything. The agent's voice. We need to speak to the internal security lead and the contract oversight manager. Right now. No one asked why. No one dared. In that moment, I no longer felt like the employee who had just been dismissed. I felt the silence of an office, realizing that what they thought was a harmless internal spat had crossed into a boundary far larger than they imagined. And in that moment, Elena's being fired was no longer the main story. The story was why two CISA agents walked into the office at 3:45 in the afternoon without asking permission. I tightened my grip on the envelope, not out of tension, but because I knew the wave Monica believed she controlled had already slipped out of her hands. When people who work with secrets arrive, they do not come to warn, they come to correct. And clearly, in this office, something had gone wrong enough to require them. A $100 million contract can disappear faster than you can brew a fresh pot of coffee. People always imagine that numbers that large must come with weight, endless meetings, signatures, procedures no one wants to read. But when it disappears the way a small kitchen accident does. A light touch, a spill, a late, useless sigh. My company fell into that exact kind of vanishing. After the two federal infrastructure security agents walked straight into the executive operations room, the door closed, but the impact rippled through the entire floor. People pretended to look at their screens, but their eyes drifted toward the hallway. They were not curious. They could feel that this was no longer an internal issue. I was still sitting at reception, the final paycheck envelope resting on my lap. I did not need to look to know what was unfolding behind the closed door. When this agency shows up, they do not come to talk. They come to correct violations. From inside, I heard a man's voice rising sharply, followed by the scrape of a chair. Another voice cut through, calm but cold. It was the woman agent. She spoke loud enough for anyone standing near the door to hear. Your company failed to complete the mandatory access revocation process for an employee holding Tier 5 clearance. The air in the lobby froze solid. No one in the office had ever mentioned that level of clearance. Most did not understand what it meant, but the agent's tone told them this was not ordinary. The voice of the chief executive, Caldwell Denning, came next, trying to hold together whatever composure he had left. There must be some mistake. The employee was processed according to protocol. The male agent cut him off immediately. No. According to our records, your company did not file any official notice of early access termination. For a moment, I could picture every face inside that room. The woman agent continued, precise and sharp, as if she were reading a statute line by line. The company has violated 5 security clauses. 5. Not 1. She listed each item, her tone metallic, each word falling like steel on a table. Clause 4A, Transmission Data Protection. Clause 7C, Personnel Access Management. Clause 10D, Mandatory Access Revocation Protocol. Clause 11F, Hierarchical Information Handling. Clause 13A, Incident Reporting within 2 hours. Just hearing the list made the chairs in that room feel colder. The chief executive tried to stay upright, but his voice shook like thin paper. We did not intend to. The male agent answered firmly. Intent is irrelevant. This is the highest level violation. The silence that followed drained every bit of oxygen from the room. Then the woman agent delivered the line that tilted the entire office off its axis. The federal contract, valued at $100 million, is terminated effective immediately. In that moment, I heard something fall. Maybe Brenda's pen, maybe the chief executive's hope, maybe Monica's smile. Monica's voice came next, faint enough that I barely recognized it. I think the HR system did not update correctly. Maybe the software glitched. Or, I heard the male agent pause for exactly one beat before he answered. The software is not responsible for reporting to federal authorities, and the fact that you did not understand what you signed is not a valid explanation. That sentence was the final hammer sealing the lid of the coffin. No one in the room could speak after that. The chief executive dragged his chair back hard enough for the sound to echo into the hallway. He stood up, then sat down again almost instantly, as if his legs no longer remembered how to hold his weight. The woman agent added, not loudly but clearly enough for anyone listening outside. Within 2 hours, all system access will be revoked. Within 24 hours, the formal audit team will arrive. Written notice will be delivered today. No one replied. The two agents opened the door and stepped out. They did not need to look around. People moved aside instinctively. When they passed me, both paused for a single brief beat. The woman looked at me, her gaze steady but not cold. Her slight nod was confirmation that I understood the situation before they had even walked in. I placed my badge on the reception counter. The paycheck envelope is beside it. Both items had just become the most meaningless objects in the entire building. Behind me, the office sank into dense silence. A $100 million contract does not vanish with an explosion. It disappears like a spilled cup of coffee, fast, quiet, beyond retrieval. And the cruelest part was that the person who caused all of this still did not understand the extent of the damage she had created. Sometimes the best thing that happens is what comes after you walk through a door someone else has closed. I sat there in the reception area, my final paycheck envelope unopened, and my returned employee badge beside it. The office behind me was silent, the way air settles after a storm. Everyone pretended to keep working, though the entire building was clearly tilting. In that quiet, I heard footsteps approaching, not the confused steps of office workers, not the hurried steps of managers trying to regain control. It was the two CISA agents. They stopped in front of me. The woman looked at the envelope in my hand, then gave a small gesture for me to stand. We would like a private conversation. I rose without asking why. When you have worked with people like them, you learn to leave unnecessary questions behind. They led me to a small room at the corner of the hallway. Not a conference room, a rarely used break room, quiet and discreet enough. The male agent closed the door. He did not speak immediately. He observed me for a few seconds as if confirming that I was truly steady after everything that had happened. Then he spoke. We have reviewed all the technical reports you handled this year. From the federal side, we always know who actually keeps the system running. The woman continued. You are not recognized much here, but federal evaluations are different. The security reports you processed in the first quarter stood out. The stability of the Western transmission line this year carries your imprint. I was not surprised. I knew my work was never invisible to the right people, but I did not expect them to choose this moment. The male agent sat across from me. We are rebuilding the senior advisory team for the Midwest and Mountain regions. We want you to join. A direct offer. No circling, no testing, no conditions. They had observed enough not to need an interview. I began to ask about timing, about procedure, but the door burst open. Chief Executive Denning appeared pale like office paper. He had run there, breathing hard, tie crooked. Elena, he said, voice hoarse with panic. We need to talk. I stayed still. He had not seen the agents yet. When he did, he startled, then lowered his voice into something thinner, weaker. Elena, we want to reverse the earlier decision. Maybe everything happened too fast. If you come back today, we will restore all your benefits, he swallowed, and give you a raise. I did not react. He understood the silence and pressed on, grasping at the last straw he had left. I apologize for any misunderstanding in the administrative process. I assure you, we will adjust personnel to prevent anything like this again. Adjust personnel. A polite way of saying he would fire Monica in exchange for my return. I looked directly at him. He was not a bad person, just a manager too blind to see Monica's reports for what they were. But the truth was simple. I no longer belonged here. The woman agent tilted her head slightly toward me, not urging, but giving me the space to choose. David stood at the end of the hallway, having witnessed everything. His eyes did not hide the respect. The entire office had gone silent. I did not need to turn around to know. Elena, the CEO said, voice shaking with hope, I believe we can start over. I answered softly, a breath more than a sentence, but clear in the small room. I am not coming back. The man in front of me blinked twice. Perhaps he had never imagined hearing that. I continued, still calm. My termination was decided very easily. That tells me everything I need to know about my place in this company. He stood there, deflated, like someone whose lungs had lost all air. The male agent placed a hand on the table, clearly ready to end the prolonged exchange. We would like you to begin your advisory role within 2 weeks. I turned to them and gave a small nod. I accept. My voice carried no excitement and no triumph. It was simply an acknowledgement of the next step. A step forward, pushed open by the door that had just closed behind me. The agent stood, tapping the door lightly as a signal that the meeting was done. The CEO stepped back, off balance. He had no more words. None were necessary. I walked out with the agents. Every pair of eyes in the office followed us. No whispers, no doubts. Only the silence of people witnessing something they never thought would happen in this building. Sometimes the door someone else closes is not an ending. It is the shortcut to where you were meant to go. And that afternoon, I crossed that threshold with the lightest steps I had ever taken. Sometimes justice does not need a drum roll. It only needs you to walk away and let the building collapse behind you. I pushed open the heavy glass door of the ground floor and stepped outside. The Denver afternoon air felt strange enough that I paused for a second just to take it in. The clouds had cleared, sunlight spilling across the parking lot as if someone above was signaling that the previous chapter had closed exactly when it should. A breeze from the Rockies drifted through, light but sharp, carrying a quiet I had not touched all morning. I walked down 3 concrete steps, each one lighter than the last. The building behind me still stood tall, all glass and polished confidence like every day before. But today, it no longer felt steady. There was a subtle tremble around it, as if its structure understood that the authority holding it upright had just been pulled from its foundation. I did not look back. Not out of pride, not out of spite, but because there was nothing worth looking at anymore. I had seen everything I needed to see, heard everything I needed to hear, and the only thing left was the road ahead, not the building behind. A soft autumn breeze brushed past, nudging the hem of my knit cardigan. I looked down at the familiar gray fabric. For the first time all day, my cardigan carried no argument. No one is waiting by a desk to criticize it. No scrutinizing glances. No syrupy voice trying to turn a piece of clothing into evidence. Just me, Denver, the afternoon sun, and the warm fabric I liked. I kept walking, hand on my bag strap, feeling so light it was as if I had put down a weight I had carried for months, maybe even years. Through the glass behind me, I saw silhouettes rushing around. The building was absorbing the news, recalibrating, trying to survive the consequences it created for itself. But none of that belonged to me anymore. I was simply the person who walked out first when the ground started to shake, not the one who had to stay behind to hold up the roof that had just lost a supporting beam. I crossed the walkway toward the parking lot. The Denver sunlight hit my eyes, too bright but in a good way. A beautiful afternoon, bright enough that the cold, forgotten morning coffee inside that office deserved to stay behind. I paused by my car, relaxed my shoulders, and drew in a long breath. Some moments in life do not shift with a bang, they shift with a breath. This was one of those moments. If you enjoy stories where quiet people win in quiet, razor-sharp ways, I invite you to stay with this channel. I have more slow burn office fires to share, the kind every longtime worker will recognize themselves in. Stay and listen. I promise to tell the rest with all the clarity, dry wit, and justice you deserve to hear